Yes, it's Friday. That means it's time for the mailbag. I'm really glad to be back again with the mailbag. We kind of did one last week, but we didn't really do one last week. Just took questions on social media, so that was, that wasn't a real mailbag. That wasn't a proper mailbag. We got a proper mailbag this week with some great questions from Pitt fans on Panther-Lair.com. Remember, if you want to participate in the Morning Pitt Mailbag, the way to do it is to go to the website right there, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Head over to the Between Fifth and Forbes message board. Usually every Tuesday or Wednesday, we have a post up there that says, submit your questions for this week's mailbag. And you can do that. You can do exactly that. Put your questions in that thread, and we'll answer as many as we can here in the mailbag. On Friday, the Friday edition of the Morning Pit, it's always the mailbag. As always, don't forget to head over to homefieldapparel.com to get some sweet Pitt gear. I got my UIC sweatshirt on, UIC Flames, not Liberty, UIC. I got my UIC sweatshirt on. It is super sweet. It looks great. It's really comfortable, and that's what they have at homefieldapparel.com. Great Pitt gear with great Pitt logos on the best material you're going to find. It's comfortable, it's soft, and it looks awesome. So it's you need to go over to Home Field Apparel and check it out. Homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code PIT24 and you can get 15% off your first order. Homefieldapparel.com. We got questions today on the transfer portal. We got questions on basketball. We got questions on opt-outs and players who are participating in the whatever this bowl game is called, the game above Sports Bowl. We'll see. We can take questions about who's going to play in this year's Sports Bowl in Detroit for Pitt. Questions on all of that and a lot more. So let's dive into it here on the Morning Pitt Mailbag, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, we got great questions this week. I'm actually excited I'm always excited to jump into these, but I'm really excited this week because I think we've got some really outstanding questions here from the Pitt fans at Panther-Lair.com. I look forward to answering as many as we can. So let's dive into it here on the mailbag. And the first question comes from some Smenges, who's always one of our top contributors in the mailbag. He actually got his question in 21 minutes after I put out the call for mailbag questions. So shout out to Smenges as always. And it's an interesting question, one that I like and I want to answer. Best guess on the starting lineup on offense for 1, the bowl, and 2, the 2025 opener. And then follow-up question, are there 5 future starting offensive linemen on the current roster? All right, bowl game starting offense. Is that what you asked, just offense? Starting lineup on offense for the bowl game. All right. I am going to say, let's start with the offensive line. Ryan Barrett, left tackle. Ryan Jacoby at left guard. Lyndon Cooper at center, BJ Williams at right guard, and Isaiah Montgomery at right tackle. I think they'll go with Montgomery again. I think he'll start at right tackle. This is my guess. Look, this is not based on any kind of inside information or anything like that. I didn't read the question from Smenges and then send a bunch of text messages to the undercover sources in the back rooms of the South Side. I'm just guessing based on educated guesses, I guess. So that would be my guess on the offensive line. Left to right, Bear, Jacoby, Cooper, Williams, Montgomery. I think Gavin Bartholomew starts at tight end unless he decides to opt out. And I think there's a possibility of a few of these happening. We haven't seen anything yet. I'm going to wager. Pat Narduzzi said yesterday, he had a press conference yesterday, and I actually asked him, you expect many of your seniors to play. He thought they would have 90% of their seniors playing in this game, which I think is an interesting number. It's a lot, because the last time they were in a bowl game 2 years ago in the Sun Bowl, they had a lot of opt-outs and guys who didn't play, guys who were looking at the NFL or were hurt or whatever it may be. I think Gavin Bartholomew will play in this one. Provided he doesn't opt out. And I think he'll be the starting tight end. Wide receiver will be interesting. Kanate Munfield put up a tweet earlier this week announcing his declaration for the NFL draft and thanking Pitt and all that stuff. That sure sounded to me like a guy announcing that his Pitt career is over and that he won't be playing in the bowl game. I asked some people at Pitt. They said, I don't know if you could read that definitively or not. I'm going to guess he's not playing in the bowl game. That's just my guess. He's given no indication that he is, and he put up a tweet saying he's declaring for the NFL draft. I mean, he's out of eligibility anyway, so I'm not really sure what you're declaring for, but okay. So my guess, obviously Sincere Lee is out due to injury. I think your starting wide receivers are going to be Kenny Johnson, Raphael Williams, and I think Tyreek Robinson. the freshman wide receiver will get the start here. I think they're really high on him. I think they're excited about using him. Pat Narduzzi brought him up when talking about freshmen who could play in this bowl game and not burn their red shirts. Maybe Zion Fowler gets the start, but I think Tyreek Robinson showed a little potential on the kick returns and will be out there. I think he'll be out there playing in this game and starting. I think Desmond Reed will be back for the bowl game. Like, again, based on no inside info, I mean, he missed the Boston College game, obviously due to an injury, was banged up, but that game was a long time ago. It'll be almost a month by the time they get to this bowl game. So I'm going to bet on Desmond Reed starting in this game, and I think that covers all the offensive positions, right? I didn't forget any offensive positions, did I? I don't know about quarterback. I don't know. My guess, since the last time we saw Eli Holstein, he was on the sidelines in a boot on crutches. My guess is we will not see him in this game. And if we don't see him in this game, it's going to be David Lynch, the walk-on, leading the charge. I don't know what to tell you. That's just my guess. Now, it would be great if Eli Holstein could get out there and play one more game with this team. Try to grow, try to inspire some optimism for the offseason and heading into next year. But I really don't know. No, I don't know if he's going to be available. And then Spenge's other question, starting lineup for next year. My guess is, and I said quarterback last with the bowl game. I'll start there. I think Eli Holstein's going to be your starting quarterback next season. I think Desmond Reed will be your starting your starting running back next season. I think your starting wide receivers will be Kenny Johnson, probably Raphael Williams, and then my guess is a transfer. Your tight end, your starting tight end could be Jake Overman, could be a transfer, could be Jake Renda. Renda not in the transfer portal, missed all of this season due to injury, but got a lot of positive pub in the spring as a tight end who fit what they want the tight ends to do in this offense. So, as an athletic tight end who could split out wide. So maybe he could be the guy. I'm not really sure. The offensive line, and this ties into your question, you ask how many starting offensive linemen are currently on the roster. I think when you look at the starting O-line next year, I think there'll be two new starters. I think Ryan Baer will start. I think Lyndon Cooper will start. And I think B.J. Williams will start. Now, Williams, I think, will stay at right guard. I think Cooper will stay at center. It's a question of whether Baer stays at tackle or moves inside to guard, and that might depend on the transfers they bring in. I think they will try to get two starting offensive linemen out of the transfer portal and probably a few more guys for depth. But that would be my guess on the starting lineup, is those three returning guys and two transfers. I do think there are talented players in the depths of this roster. I think Caleb Holmes, who came in as a freshman, is really good and is going to be really good. I think Isaiah Montgomery has some real potential. It didn't go well for him when he made his first starts and got his first career playing time, but I think he's got a lot of potential, and I think they're excited about what he could potentially do in the future. I think Jackson Brown is not a lost cause as well. So, I think there's talented players in the group. They just need to develop. And what Pitt ran into this season is when they needed to go to the depth wasn't really ready. And so I think they're looking to get experienced players who can come in and not only compete for starting jobs, but fill out the two deep. So that if they run into, I'm talking about the transfer portal, so if they run into an injury situation again in 2025, they're not going to be caught in the position they were in this year, and where one injury just, overturns the apple cart. I think they want to be better prepared for it. So that's my best guess on those questions. Zeppy13 says, does Branson Taylor have eligibility to return next season if he wants? He should have a COVID year, right? I would guess he would be a day 3 draft pick, but would it be worth it for Pitt to pay him if we can? I think if there was an opportunity to get Branson Taylor back, they would pay him the money to get him back. I think they were more than willing to pay him to come back in 2024. I think they would be more than willing to pay him to come back in 2025, but I believe he is out of eligibility. Branson Taylor was in that 2020 recruiting class. He was on the roster in 2020. The way I always looked at it was, if you were on the roster in 2020, you get an extra year. It's probably not the way to really look at it. I think what it ultimately came down to was 2020 didn't count against anyone's 4 years of eligibility, right? You have 5 years to play 4. At the most basic level, you have 5 years to play 4. At the most basic level, everybody has 4 years of eligibility, right? You have 5 years to use those 4. I think what the COVID year really was was that if you used a year of eligibility in 2020, it didn't count. You got that year back. So a guy who played that year, so like who played in, Kenny Pickett played in 2020. Although that's not, yeah, that's kind of a good example. Kenny Pickett played in 2020, or Jordan Addison played in 2020, could have had an extra year of eligibility. The guys who have been here, Jason Collier is a 6th-year player, all those defensive tackles last year, all these guys who played in 2020 used a year of eligibility, got that year back to use it on the back end. Branson Taylor redshirted, so he didn't use one of his 4 years of eligibility. He ended up he redshirted. So he still had 4 years of eligibility coming out of that year. So he didn't have an extra year here. Now, maybe due to injury, he could have applied for a waiver or something like that, but it doesn't seem like that worked. And so Branson Taylor, as far as I can tell, and this could change by the time you watch this video because everything changes all the time really fast, he's out of eligibility. He's done. I think Pitt would be more than happy to have him back. They would wish to have him back. They felt like they were much better when he was there. And I think there's some truth to that, even though the offensive line wasn't perfect this season, even with Taylor. They were better with him than without him. So they would definitely take him back, but I don't think that opportunity exists. Zenmeister 1992 says, are there designated people within the athletic department that oversee the portal for all of the different sports? I seem to think that college teams will begin to run like pro teams with separate scouting departments, one for athletes already in college and one for high school recruits. Does Pitt then treat the portal season as a mini recruitment and have to be selective on who they offer, have in, etc., as to not cast a wide net on some pie-in-the-sky candidates and lose out on guys they may have needed but not preferred? Yeah. Everything you're talking about is happening. They're not necessarily within the athletic department, but within each sport. Each team has its guys watching the portal. Alex Klein at Pitt, I think as far back as last February, had taken on the title Director of College Scouting. Like, that's scouting guys in the portal. And truthfully, the entire recruiting department is working on this. The entire recruiting department is scouting college players. They have people monitoring the portal all the time. So when a player goes in, when somebody new shows up, they are on it. They find out about who they are. They gather as much information as they can and, get that information to the relevant parties. And so all of that is happening. Your question, does Pitt treat the portal season as a mini recruitment? Absolutely. Like, they absolutely do. It is another recruitment period. And yeah, they have to approach it like they do with recruiting. Now, it's a little bit different because I think when you're recruiting transfers, their interests and what moves them in their recruitment is different from what moves a high school kid. I think there's less whining and dining and wooing. I think there's a lot more of a business-like approach. I think you get down to business. And you see these guys. I mean, there's a few reasons. One, I think you get right down to business and you kind of move through the process quickly, partially because the timeline is much shorter. If a guy goes into the transfer portal on December 1st, he's really got about a month, give or take, because of the holidays, to go visit schools, see what's out there, find out what he can get, and get ready to enroll by January. So it's a short time frame. So you see guys taking like 3 visits in a weekend, or something like that. Kanate Mumfield went to a bunch of schools. There are going to be guys, there will be transfers who visit 2, 3, maybe 4 schools this coming weekend because they're trying to see as many as they can, talk to the coaches, see if they can get along with the coaches and play in their system, and then find out about the NIL offer. That's what it is. And they might not have those conversations with the coaches, but they'll have those conversations. And so it moves much more quickly because they're on a shorter timeline. It also, fits with transfers because I think transfers are more business-like. They're not as interested in getting wooed by the stadium and the crowds and all the fancy this and that. They just want to go find out if they're going to play, what's the depth chart look like, and what's the NIL offer look like. Simple and to the point. So it is like a mini recruitment, but I think it's also on a much more compressed timeline. It takes a lot less time to move through it, and you hit it. You hit the ground running, for the players and the coaches. And yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. So, the answer to a lot of your questions, Pitt is doing these things. All these schools are doing these things. They're approaching it like this. And it's even to the point where some schools are developing scouting departments that don't just prepare information for the coaches to look at, but they actually take the lead on offering guys, where the coaches in some places are doing a lot more coaching than recruiting, and the recruiting is being handled by the scouting and recruiting departments. And I wouldn't be surprised to see things move in that direction as well. So yeah, it is shifting. What it looks like behind the scenes in recruiting and with high school kids or transfers, it is shifting. Along those lines, Atwood409 says, do you feel like Pitt is getting more comfortable with navigating life in the transfer portal? They were clearly behind for some years and maybe were caught completely flat-footed with the Jordan Addison situation, but is it your sense that there are improvements in this area? Yeah, I think so. So the Jordan Addison situation, caught flat-footed, kind of. Yeah, I think they were blindsided by Jordan Addison going into the transfer portal after getting a good NIL deal, after winning the Biletnikoff, after making his name at Pitt. I think they were caught blindsided by that. I think the whole country was blindsided by that move. I still think Jordan Addison's transfer, maybe even more than like Caleb Williams, and those two are probably near the top. Maybe Jalen Hurts to a certain extent. But I think Addison really stands out as one of those sort of touchstone moments, touchstone moments that opened everyone's eyes nationally of like, holy cow, this is what it is now. This is what it's going to be. Here's a guy at a school that recruited him as a 3-star kid, helped develop him into a Biletnikoff Award winner. Dude was literally one of the best players in the country, the best wide receiver in the country that year, got a healthy NIL deal, and he's going off to the highest bidder. Wow, this is where we're at. Everybody who said the sky was falling and it was going to become the Wild West, they were right. And so I think, yeah, Pitt was blindsided by the Jordan Addison situation, but I think everyone was blindsided by the Jordan Addison situation. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they had not, what was your wording on this? That they were not comfortable with navigating the transfer portal. Because remember, a few months before Jordan Addison transferred, they went out and actively pursued Keaton Slovis. They saw, and I think they were preparing for this even late in the 2021 season, knowing, okay, Kenny Pickett's gone. We don't know if Nick Patty or Nate Yarnell are going to be ready. And I mean, even if they are, we think we could do better. Here's this guy, let's see what we can find. Like, they prioritized going to get a quarterback, even though they had Nick Patty coming back as a veteran, Nate Yarnell coming back as a redshirt freshman. They went out looking for a transfer quarterback to bring in. And so, and that was before Jordan Addison left. So, a pretty clear sense of, we can be pretty good next year. We think we can build on what we did this year. We need a quarterback to do it. Let's go to the portal. And so I think they've been comfortable with it. And I think, this year, whatever we said last December about the haul they got out of the transfer portal, and I forget exactly what our reactions were, but I think they did pretty well. I mean, clearly, Eli Holstein, Desmond Reed had great seasons. I think, Nate Matlack, say what you will. I mean, he still ended up with 7 sacks or something like that. Key Thompson was a solid backup at middle linebacker. Raphael Williams was productive. Jake Overman was more useful than expected. Nick James was the starting defensive tackle. I think they went out and they did well. I think they did well in the portal. They had a good sense of what they needed, what they wanted. Oh, Lyndon Cooper was a starter all season long. But they had a sense of what they needed and what they wanted. They found the guys that fit what they needed, and they were able to land them. So I think they've shown an ability to navigate the portal and do it pretty well. You're operating within certain constraints. I mean, there are always going to be budgetary restrictions when you're entering this space. But with that in mind, I think they've had a good amount of success. So yeah, I don't know if they were entirely behind. I think they were behind in terms of fundraising. Pitt as a university was behind in terms of embracing NIL. I think they've caught up there, but I think the football program and the basketball program too have largely done what they need to do as much as they could do within the constraints of, again, the budgetary restrictions and what Pitt would sort of allow them to do. Jay Lazinger says, do you get a sense fairly early on around now / post bowl game who we are in danger of losing? Obviously, Holstein and Reed are the big ones. I've been saying for a few days, kind of all week, that I think Eli Holstein and Desmond Reed come back. Every indication I'm getting is they're coming back. And every indication I'm getting is pretty much all the main guys that you would want to hold on to are coming back. Now you can say, well, I would want to hold on to Nate Yarnell. Yeah, of course. And that one, you're not getting that. I would want to hold on to Dejon Reynolds too. I think he's a good player. But when you look at starters, main contributors, Eli Holstein, Desmond Reed, the linebackers, some of the young defensive line, I think they're going to bring like all of these guys back. I thought there would be some starters or starter quality players they would lose to the portal, but it looks like the retention efforts this offseason have been largely successful, if not almost entirely. It's pretty impressive. And we'll see where everything is when the dust settles in January and understanding that there's another transfer window in the spring. And, we'll see where things are at that point. But right now, it looks like a pretty successful offseason for Alliance 412 and for the Pitt football program in terms of retention. Now, they need to get some additions. They need to bring guys in out of the portal, and that work is underway for sure. But pretty good work so far in terms of holding on to the guys that they wanted to hold on to. Ryan 1203 says, who's visiting this weekend? We got a list on the message boards. Go check it out, Ryan. We'll repost the full list so everybody kind of gets up to date, and then we'll update it 10 times because things keep changing all the time. But we've got a list running on Panther-Lair.com. Go check it out. Let's see. SV Pig 1 says, do you see in the NIL landscape college football turning into a baseball salary situation or more of a capped NFL approach down the line? I think it'll be capped. I think like some schools will want an uncapped situation in terms of salary and revenue sharing and NIL. I think conferences will realize it's better for their conference as a whole if everybody's on the same playing field. If you're the SEC and you just let Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss run wild, spending like crazy, does that really elevate your whole conference? And you got A&M and you got Texas in there. I mean, you got a lot of schools that could spend themselves into oblivion and still not be in oblivion because they have such insane boosters. But if you put them all not on the same level, but you create a cap so that you can at least give all of the programs a chance to be successful, because I think the SEC's ultimate goal is going to be to try to get the playoffs expanded so more SEC teams get in. And in order for the SEC to get more teams in, they need more teams to be competitive and be good. And I think that's where it sort of benefits from a competitive balance standpoint. It benefits the conference, which, rising tide lifts all boats and all that stuff. It benefits the conference to have that cap. That's just sort of my thought on it. Maybe Greg Sankey looks at it and says, like, no, are you kidding? I want the teams that are willing to go nuts. I want them to be able to go nuts so they can, really carry the banner. But I think it's probably best if they put a cap on it. And I think that's where they'll end up. It's going to have to be the conferences that lead the charge, though. It's not going to be the NCAA. It's never going to be the NCAA again. The NCAA is more useless than it has ever been, and the real decisions that get made and the real regulations that get put in and the real restrictions that are enacted are going to come from the conferences, either working collaboratively or independently. And there might be an SEC salary cap, and there might be an ACC salary cap, and there might be a Big 10 salary cap, and there might be a Big 12 salary cap, or there might be mergers within those conferences, and each one has its own salary cap, or they can come together and form some sort of alliance or governing body to create some basic rules, scholarship limits, salary caps, how you handle full scholarships and partial, all these different things. That it's, all these different areas where it's probably better to have uniformity across the conferences. For a lot of reasons, I think it's better to have uniformity, and you need the conferences to work together on that. And I think they ultimately will. We might not like the system they devise, but I think that ultimately they will work collaboratively, even including the ACC and the Big 12, I don't think it'll just be the SEC and Big Ten. They'll have the most power, and their votes might count for 1.3 as opposed to 1. But I think they will include the ACC and Big 12 and get some amount of, like I say, sort of uniformity across the 4 power conferences. But I we'll see, right? We'll see. Who knows what this sport really wants or what they want it to be. I know they want it to make money, right? That's what it comes down to. And they'll make money by adding more college football playoff spots. And then they can make the most out of that by getting more teams in. And they get more teams in by having more talented teams. They have more talented teams by enacting some amount of competitive balance, I think. I could be completely wrong about this. I just cover recruiting, man. That's it. All right, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Look, we're getting really close to that 4,500 number. I'd love to get to 4,500 subscribers here on YouTube. I think that'd be a pretty cool benchmark. Yeah, after that, I'm just going to be pushing to try and get us to 5,000, but it'd be pretty cool to get to 4,500. So if you don't already subscribe to our YouTube channel, please do so. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Hit that like button as well. We always like that. It makes us feel really good. Don't forget to check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And I think that's about it. What a week it's been. We appreciate everybody tuning in for all these things all week long. And yeah, have a great weekend. All right. Thanks for watching the mailbag. Enjoy your weekend. There's nothing going on. It'll be quiet. Yeah, right. It's never quiet. We'll cover it all. Everything that happens this weekend, we'll be talking about it on Monday in the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.